That was fast. I was just minding my own business over there. Here's my $1. Have $1. Yeah, thanks. Great. Good morning. My name is Barbara, and I'm an alcoholic. Isn't this something? It's just good morning. Whoa. I came with one of my sponsees, Leslie, and she joined me, and I was telling her on the way down here, I said, I did a lot of damage in Mexico, and I was walking through the hallway, and I thought, who would have thought that I'd come back, maybe, wow, I'm coming up on 16, my birthday's January 9th, 1990, and we had a house in Mexico for over 20 years, and so 35 years later, perhaps, I'm coming back to talk about God, and that we do get a chance. We get a chance, and it's spectacular. And I have to just stay. You have to stay here. Welcome. I didn't catch your name. Oh, you're crying. Corinne, is it? Curry? Welcome. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a safe place. It'll be all right. All these names. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Thank you, Holly, for calling me. Thank you. And thank you to the committee. And it's Teresa. Thank you for that bag. I have a bag in my room. It has a jack-o'-lantern on it. And my birthday's Halloween. Thank you. I know everyone else is celebrating my birthday, too. But, and who else? Kevin, thank you for moving the podium. Where is he? I'm waiting for someone to feed me grapes while we do this. And who else did I forget? Everyone. Thank you to all the speakers. And thank you to this wonderful convention and including me. Really, really special. And my driver, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy, who I understand picked up Karen, the Al-Anon speaker, drove all the way down here, and then went back to get me. That's beyond the call. So, thank you. So, I'm going to follow the rules that were taught to me. So, I'm going to tell you what it was like, what happened to change me, and what I'm like now. I grew up in California in a city called Studio City. It's in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm the oldest child. I have a brother who's 8 years younger. My father was a trumpet player and a composer, and he's from the East Coast, and he met my mom there, and she was from New Jersey. She was a band singer. Don't go, Holly, it'll get better. You won't be disappointed, I promise. I'm trying. Anyway, they met, they fell in love, and they came to California. They came to California because it was the late 40s, and there was a thing called the Carnation Show. It was a radio show, and it was a big deal. And my dad played the trumpet on that show for years. They got here, and they had me. And that was in 1949. I'm the same age as my new friend, Marina. Halloween, we both have Halloween birthdays. Who would have thought? We're both going to be 16 years sober. Ooh, you're on one coast and I'm on the other. It's good. So there it was. They moved into a little house, and my mother's still in that house today, and they had me, and it was great. It was the 50s. There are a lot of young people here, but I talk a lot about how it was growing up for me because it made such an impact on who I am. And the musicians would come from over the hill. The San Fernando Valley, on the other side of like a small little range of mountains, are all the studios where they do all the recording and all the filming. And when I was a kid, I know it's really hard to believe, but there were no freeways in Los Angeles. Yeah, I look great, don't I? I'm preserved in alcohol. It works, you know. All the musicians would come to the Jones house. They would come over Coldwater Canyon or Laurel Canyon. I'm sure you've heard of those canyons through all the movies that have been done about them. And they would come over the hill, and they would land at the Jones house. And they would come every single day. This was not something that happened on just Friday. They would come every single day. Sometimes there would be 6 guys, sometimes there would be 20. They would show up after their gigs. They would show up with a jug under their arm, a carton of cigarettes, their instrument, and they would come for a drink. And my mother would greet them at the door. My mother was kind of dramatic. I don't think it's rubbed off on me. And she would greet them with a chignon, and she would have those little hair things hanging down, and she would have a cigarette holder, and her dress would match the hors d'oeuvres. And it was like Loretta Young, you know. She would open the door, and she would greet everyone, and come in. Oh, hi, Jack, how are you? And they would start to come from about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 8 o'clock they'd leave. And it happened every day. There was always food. Everybody smoked in the 50s. And I mean, I think my dog was behind in the backyard having a cigarette, you know. Everyone was smoking, and it would start to happen. Pretty soon, it'd get a little louder, you know, that camaraderie we have. And the smoke level would get more intense. You'd start to smell bourbon. You'd hear those ice cubes in the glasses. The blender would start going. And musicians are a blast. Pretty soon, there would be jokes going on, or like arguments back and forth, and all of a sudden someone would pick up their instrument and they'd start playing, and my mom might start singing, and somebody else would join in, and it was spectacular. It was fun. It was grand, and it was every day. And I learned something really young. I learned that if you drink, you have friends. You have friends. They come to your house. There's a party every day. Everybody likes you. I also learned that when everybody would leave, my house was different. My house was scary. My dad invariably had too much to drink, and my dad was not a yeller or a screamer. To the day he died, I worried that he was going to one day, like, his head would explode or something. He was a seether. He was a drinker and a seether and a smoker. And he would just get quiet. Now, on the other hand, my mother was a rager. She was dangerous. She was violent. She was a hypocrite. You know, she would start bad-mouthing those people that had just showed up, and she would, like, be yelling about them, and there are ashes on the floor, and look at the water spots on all of the tables, and I can't stand those people. And the next day, hello, come on in. You know, it was confusing. It was real confusing. Couldn't get it together. What I also learned is my house was the kind of house that if you said you were cold, somebody invariably would say, it's not cold in here. What are you talking about? It's not cold. And I learned to say things like, I know, I'm just kidding. I'm not cold. If I said I'm afraid, somebody would say, what are you afraid of? Nobody's afraid. Suck it up. I go, I'm not really afraid. I'm kidding. When I was growing up, they had things, I don't know if you had these in Arizona, we had things called incinerators. Does anybody remember those? Well, if you don't, they were like these little horrible things. We would burn our trash every day. So in the backyard of everybody's home was this fire thing. And it usually had bricks around it, and like a smokestack, and this big metal door that you had to open up with a stick because the door was hot. And at the end of the day, little children were sent out to do their chores and burn the trash. You know, I work with children now. We wouldn't anymore send an 18-year-old out there to open up a thing and throw the trash in. And I hated it. It was terrifying to me, and I was afraid all the time. I was afraid in that house that I'd get hit. I was afraid that I wasn't going to be all right. I was afraid, and I couldn't let you know. And I learned really, really young. Better be self-reliant. Better suck it up. Better not tell anybody how you really feel. I learned how to read your face and know exactly what you wanted, when you wanted it, like that. I mean, I can do that. I'm good at that. And I can be your new best friend, because if you don't like me, which is the worst thing, then you might turn your back on me and you'll walk away, and then I'll really be alone. Because I felt alone from the time I started. I was out the chute and it just didn't feel right to me. In the 50s, my mom had an agenda for me. The whole deal was that you were supposed to be an asset, so that when you met your Prince Charming, and you will, Barbie, you'll meet him, you're going to be an asset for him. You will help him. So they had all these little middle class little girls in classes. We took classes to be our best selves. We were in ballet. I was in tap, singing, in case he needed a song in the evening. I was in fencing. That's useful. They had me in archery. I was in tumbling. Tumbling is good. I took water ballet, but that was not to be confused with the hula. We took hula lessons when I was growing up, and you guys are from far away. I just want to point out, if you've never been to California, in the San Fernando Valley, there is no ocean. There's no water there. And we were obsessed in the 50s with ocean themes. I don't understand it to this day. Everyone had a pool. Everybody had a cabana in their backyard. Everybody had nets on the walls with little glass balls in it and dead starfish everywhere. And all the little girls were taking hula, and it was something to be seen. I probably needed a drink one day after fencing. I'm not sure. She had me busy. I was in Girl Scouts, I was in Brownies, I was in cotillion. I don't know if you have that in Arizona. Cotillion is an interesting thing. It teaches you how to be a perfect lady or gentleman. Wow, what a trip. We learned the foxtrot, and we learned the waltz. We learned the cha-cha-cha, none of which go well with Jimi Hendrix. 5 years later, we were smoking tea. We were not accepting tea in a cup and saucer. We were learning how to put our hands appropriately and our feet crossed at the ankle, and little boys were wearing bow ties. And is it any wonder that in the 60s, in the San Fernando Valley, all hell broke loose? Wow, it was a blast. It was really, really fun. I had my first fix when I was 12 years old. I palmed. I know it's shocking to think and look at me to think that I would steal. I'm so good at it. At 12, I palmed 3 non-filter Camels from my parents, and I had a little smoking rendezvous in a cabana down the street. And my 2 little friends didn't like it. They were like coughing, and they were so weak. And, I loved it. I sucked that smoke in, and nothing fazed me, and I smoked my cigarette and theirs, and it was wonderful. I had been watching those musicians. Was watching how they put it in the side of their mouth, like this, and I knew how they flick it with their finger, and I could spit the tobacco out. With inventory work, I later found out, you know what I loved? I love equipment. I don't know what kind of alcoholic you are or addict. There's so many terms this weekend. Welcome. I'm just about everything. But I loved it because I had cigarettes and filters. About 10 years later, we had those little filters with the water in it. Does anybody remember? Ooh, wasn't that fun? It was just so great. You could hear you're smoking, Whew. When I got sober, I think I had about 5 or 6 packs of cigarettes at the bottom of course, a big purse, more is better, and about 32 Bics down there. And I think I thought that if the bomb dropped, I'd be ready. I would just sit and smoke, and I wouldn't share. But I loved all that stuff. And I was off and running with the cigarettes. I could put my foot out to the side, and I was ready. The next year, I found those little mini whites. Anybody like those? Oh, yeah. Let's just have a moment for the mini whites, It's just fabulous. Just fabulous. I was a ballerina by then, and I could dance very, very fast. Nobody was better than me. And so I've got my cigarettes, and I'm spitting the tobacco. I got those little mini whites happening, and I'm 13, and all was going fairly well. And then, nightmare. Twiggy shows up from England. Now, if you're young, she's about as thin as this stand. And up until then, Zoftic women were in, Sophia Loren, and, it was looking good if you had some curves. Bad news for the ballerinas. So, we're resilient. We found that if you eat Kleenex, it fills you up. We started to practice anorexia and bulimia. And as a result of all of those things, I get to go to all the podiums today because I'm well-rounded. Just like my mommy wanted, It's just wonderful. When I was 15, I met the man I would marry 9 years later. He's a musician, pattern, inventory work, and we didn't get married right away. We did that alcoholic dance, love you, hate you, can't live without you, get lost, all that stuff for 9 years. Never learned that lesson. And I did marry him when I was 24 years old. And still I'm not drinking. If you're me and you come from the house I come from and you come from all that fighting, I had decided a long time before that alcohol was messy, that it was sloppy. You talk like this a lot, and I would see those alcoholics come, and they were so sweet and nice, and they'd leave, and they were nasty. They just get a little edge to them. And I thought, I'm not going to drink like my parents. I'm going to use drugs. That's what I'll do, because I can control my drug use. And when I was 18 years old, I went to a party, and I was dating a guy at the bowling alley that I worked at. It was Joe Kirkwood's place. Used to have a TV show called Joe Palooka's, and it was on Ventura Boulevard. It was a pretty big deal. We all worked at the bowling alley. And my boyfriend got a new apartment, and it was like a housewarming deal. And now we're like 18 years old, and we're surfers. Now, I want to remind you there's no water there, in case you forgot, because it's such a riveting story. We're now wearing love beads, and we all have our hair parted down the middle, and mine was really stringy, and we have these peasant shirts on and bell bottoms with embroidery on the bottom, and we have squaw boots on. Did you guys have squaw boots? Okay. And we're surfers. There were actually guys that would have the wax in their back pocket. They didn't have a surfboard, but they had the wax. You'd go on dates in Woodies. No one had a board, and no one even went to the beach, but that's what we did. So now we go to this party, and I go into the apartment, and I walk in, and it's all dark. They have those pole lamps in the corner, and they've taken out the lights, and there's like a green one and a blue one and a red one, and people are making out on the couches, and Sam Cooke's on the turntable. If you're really young, you could see me later. I'll tell you what that is. We used to have, our music came on big black discs. Anyway, it was spectacular. And don't you love those bombs? Aren't they great? So I walk in, and everybody is there. And they're dancing, and they're kissing. And I walk into the kitchen, and there are booze bottles on every counter. All different ones. It was unbelievable. And I remember the voice in my head saying, you're 18 now. You're not like your parents. You could drink. There's not a problem here. What are you talking about? So I looked around. I didn't have any information. I didn't know how to really drink. I saw the effects of it my whole life. So I walked around, and I made a decision. I had one of everything. It was just wonderful. There were brown ones and clear ones. There were things with soda, and there was orange juice there. It must be for morning when you wake up. And There was stuff in the blender and stuff. There was a green one. It was beautiful, like emerald, like for St. Patrick's Day, I suppose. And I just had a blast. And something happened for me. I had spent my entire life worried. And we come here and we find out it's called the bondage of self. I liken it to a catcher's mask, and you couldn't see my mask. But I spent my whole life looking through my mask, wondering what you think of me. What do you want from me? Am I doing okay? Do you think I'm cute? What do you think? Oh, you like tuna? I like tuna. Yeah, that works for me, yeah. Really? Okay. I mean, anything you wanted, I'm like that. And I drank those drinks at that party, and I didn't have a mask. I, for the first time in my life, felt perfect in my own skin. I was just fine, just the way I am. I was the prettiest one there. You could ask anyone. I had thick hair. I was the best dancer. All the boys wanted to talk to me. You could tell. They were just lining up. And the ones who didn't want to talk to me, I didn't care. You know, be gone. On your way, because I am styling. You know, and I could surf. I was certain of it. Just certain of it. Just bring on a board for me. It was the most amazing, amazing feeling I have ever had in my entire life. And it lasted for about 45 minutes. And then, you know when your mouth starts to water? And you get a little green and it's hot? And you have to like undo your love beads and somebody talked about it last night. I think it was Mickey, reading the room. You start looking around, wondering why no one's sweating. I had that voice in my head like I had never had in my life. And pretty much it said, "Find a toilet." Was a problem. There was going to be a big problem. So I found myself in the master bathroom, and I was on my knees honoring the toilet. My squaw boots at one point came up into the water. I'm certain of it. And I hear my boyfriend say, "Hi, Joe. Hi, Mrs. Kirkwood. I'm glad you could come to the party. Let me show you the apartment." I'm busy. And then I hear, "This is the master bedroom." And then everything went into slow motion, and the bathroom door opened slowly, and I heard him say, "And this is the master bathroom." And being a good cotillion, I turned my head to greet them, and I nailed all three of them. Thank you. And I'll tell you what happened for me. I didn't drink again for 6 years. You don't have to tell me one of those lessons more than once. Validated everything I thought about alcohol. I escalated my drug use, I'll tell you that. And I'll talk fast. The sun's hitting you. And there I was. When I was 24 years old, I still wasn't drinking. I got married to that guy, and we set up house. He was a musician. He was a drummer and a percussionist. He made a lot of money in the music business. And we bought a house right away, and we had a little white house in the valley, and with little white fence around it. We had 2 white Cadillacs. We had a little white dog and white roses. The walls were Navajo white. It was the 70s now. Cocaine is white. We had a lot of cocaine. And it was great. It was really, really great. And we set up house. And we set up a house that was a lot like the house I grew up in, you know. We started to make friends right away with people in the business, because that's what my husband did. And I had a problem. These people liked vodka martinis. Now, I liked vodka martinis because there's equipment, you know. I like that equipment thing. You got your glasses and your olives and your who and the blender and the shaker and the hoop. But I have to master the toilet problem. So I'm very vigilant. I worked on it every day for 6 months. And I figured it out. All of a sudden, I could drink, I could use drugs, I could smoke those cigarettes, and let the games begin. I was about 24 years old, and it started. And I don't know if you're the kind of alcoholic that I am, but I loved to drink. I'm not big on mixes, honey. I love alcohol. I love it. Near the end of my drinking, glasses got in the way, if you know what I mean. You know, who needs them? Although I had collected every glass possible, because I like my stuff. And I found out what it was that was so magical for me. If I have my booze and I have my drugs and I have my cigarettes and I have that husband on my arm, I have everything I need to put between me and you. Because I can't do you. I can't. You might ask me how I am. This is tricky, you know? How do you want me to be? You might ask me my opinion on something. You might ask me, did you see so-and-so movie? And if I haven't seen it, it's clear you saw it. I have to lie. And then you might ask me how it is, and it's busy, 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 busy. But if I'm drinking, I don't really care. You know, I didn't see it, and I'm not planning on it. And there you are. We set up this house. We started to have children. We had a little girl, and then we had a little boy. He started to make an enormous amount of money in the music business. Enormous. There was a lot of money to be made in the 70s and 80s. And we started to buy property. We bought 3 homes and a condominium. He paid for all of them. And if you looked at us, you'd say, look at those kids in their 30s. They are styling. You know, look at them. They're just fabulous. They travel, they have property, they have money. Isn't that something? But if you were in that house when the door was closed, what you would really see is that the escalation of alcoholism. We started to die slow deaths in that house. And alcoholism is a family disease. Everybody was affected. I guess I should mention I was up and over 200 pounds 3 times in that marriage because I was so happy. I was really happy there. And I was a busy alcoholic, very busy. I found this out later. You know what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous and the program and the steps? You get to find out who you are and why you do things and solutions for them. And it's just, I don't know how that just came through. It was just one of those boats, sorry. Anyway, there I was, I'm busy. I'm the PTA president, I am the soccer mom, the baseball mom, I'm working in the library, I'm a preschool teacher, I am everywhere. Because why? I don't want to sit still. I can't sit still. I can't sit down because I might have to look at the fact that my relationships in almost every area are not very good. My relationship with my children is not good, so I overcompensate. My relationship with my husband really stinks, but he's the only one, and till death do you part, I got to stay there, you know. And it was a mess. It was really, really a mess. And this went on for a long time. And I don't know when it stopped being fun. It started to be a necessity. Pretty soon there was mayonnaise and butter and bread and wine and booze and a trip to the dealer every day and, you know, busy girl. Come on, kids, get in the car. We're going. We were going and going and going. And so pretty soon we were gone. And I thought nobody noticed. You know, I just thought they didn't notice. About the last 4 years of my drinking and using, I started to do a little thing. I would get up at about 4:30 in the morning, and I would grab the booze. I had cocaine in the bottom of my cigarette case, and I'd light a cigarette. And now I hold the cigarette in the side of my mouth because I am a mother, and you need your hands free to be available to your children. And I'm a good mother, you know, and I'll give you a little tip. When you're breastfeeding and the ashes fall on the child, you just blow them off, and they don't notice. I have skills. I can figure things out. I always have an answer. And there I was. I would grab my cigarettes, do a couple of lines, cigarette at the side of my mouth, pour a little orange juice so I could be healthy, and get the booze, sit by a refrigerator out in the garage because we had set up an office and a music room for him. You know, it was padded and he's a drummer and it's noisy. And I would sit at a computer and it would be 4:30 in the morning, be dark outside, and I'd have that coffee and I would start to play a little game, and the game was called Tetris. Okay, if you don't know about Tetris, it's all these little geometric shapes start to come down one at a time. You have to line them up at the bottom, and you press a button, and they disappear. And they start to come down faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. Smoking those cigarettes, and playing the game, drinking. Oh, it was fabulous. Because it would calm me down. Because at this point, I'm insane. I am crazy. And I don't know about alcohol. And I don't know about alcoholism. Because I can't tell you, I can't even ask you, what drawer do you put the silverware in? I spend a great deal of time looking to see what you do. And I can't tell you that I think I'm losing my mind. So I'd play this game, it would calm me down, and about 6:30 I'd go in and get my daughter ready for school. It's really important how she looks, because it's all about me. And I'd put little pigtails, and I'd do her a well-balanced little breakfast, put her in front of Sesame Street, they'll make her smart. And then I'll go back out and I play that game, and I'm getting it together. Then I go in, I get my little son ready, his little red hair, he's so cute. Get him a little breakfast, get his little lunch boxes ready. And at about 8:30, we would all three leave, and I would take Amy to her school, Jeff to his school, and I'd go to my school because I'm a teacher. I take care of little children. Loaded. What a mess. And I'll tell you the darndest thing at that job. I had directors for years and years and years saying things like, "Why can't you be more like Miss Barbie? She has such wonderful energy in her room." No kidding. Boy, did I. You know, a cup of, and I couldn't drink at the job. I want it known that I never drank alcohol in that job. I drank turpin hydrate. Okay. A lot of people don't know about that. Some guy in Portland once told me that that's called GI gin. And what it is codeine and alcohol. And I'm here to tell you it's spectacular with cocaine. You know that balance you used to strive for? Honey, I found it. And what would happen is that if we were talking about butterflies, we would all become butterflies. You know, we'd be breaking out of cocoons, and we'd be running down the hall and flying off desks, and it was just fabulous. And the parents would say things like, "Oh, you're so lucky to be in Miss Barbie's room." You know, "Where is Miss Barbie?" "I think she's in the ladies' room." "Yeah." "There are a lot of kids here." You know, it's like, whoa. You know, it was just a mess. Who's watching the kids? I don't know. They're out on the yard. And there you have it. And this went on, and this went on, and this went on. My father died when he was 59 years old. He died of a massive heart attack. The doctor said his heart exploded before he hit the ground. He battled his weight. He battled drinking. He never let any feeling out, ever. He chain smoked, and the death certificate said massive heart attack, but he died of alcoholism. Untreated alcoholism. And it's about 10 years later, and Mickey talked about it last night. I didn't believe in God. I was in that garage in November of 1989, and I said to a God I didn't believe in, "Please help me. Please." Now, what I meant was, please help me die like my father. This is too hard for me. I can't do lunch boxes. I don't like to shower. Marina talked about it. It's too much work. It's too much. The phone rings. You have to pick it up. You know, I was in so many blackouts the last 6 months of my drinking. I don't know why I just thought of this. I actually volunteered once. I couldn't figure out why people were driving up to the front of the house, and they were bringing boxes. And the boxes were filled with papers. I had volunteered to check the spelling bee for the entire school. the whole elementary school. I mean, I was like trying to focus with one eye at this point, and it was like, huh? It was a mess, and it was hard work, and I wanted to die. I wanted it over. And that was in November, and in January, there I was. We had fake trees in those days, and my dad had died 2 days before Christmas, and I was drinking all day and using all day, and by then I wasn't leaving the house, and I had put on another 40 pounds. I was about 238 pounds. I was bigger than this podium. I was adorable. Just his little gift. And you know that day when you can't get there? Nothing makes anything go away, and it's a bad day. It's the day. And at the end of dinner, I pushed myself away from a table. I had never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had not heard of alcoholism, and I said, I'm going to a meeting. And nobody in my family really said anything because I was always in a meeting because I was like, busy. I'm the president of this and this and this and this, and don't I look great? And I got in my car and I started to cry. And I got on an on-ramp I had never been on before in a freeway. I got off as if I did this every single day. I went right into a church parking lot, and I parked my car and I walked right into a room. It was a half hour before the meeting started, and it was a food meeting. And I couldn't fit on the chairs, those metal folding chairs, and so I pushed it up against the wall and to balance against the wall, and I couldn't look you in the eyes anymore, so I was so full of shame, and I was crying. It was a half hour before the meeting started, and I felt a woman's hand on my back, and I heard her say, "You're going to be okay here. It's all right. You don't have to worry anymore. We're going to take care of you." And I don't know why I said what I said, but I asked her, I said, "Are you a sponsor?" And she said yes. And I said, "Will you help me?" And she said yes. And she did. She took me through the first 3 steps. She had not done an inventory. You can't give away. You can have my chair, Holly. You can't give away anything that you don't have. And when it came time to do an inventory, I worked with someone else. I started to go to those meetings, those food meetings every night, and they had this like food plan they give you, And I turned it over and it said, "No alcoholic beverages." And I was like, whoa. But being resilient, I always have a plan. I had done food programs before, and I knew that when it says you can add grapes, you can have wine. See, you're bright. When it says at 3 or 4 weeks you can have half a baked potato, you can have a vodka rocks. What's the problem? And I don't know why this happened, but for some reason I didn't have any tricks up my sleeve. I started to go to those meetings, and within 2 weeks, because there was a man at those meetings, and he was rude to me, I'm just going to tell you right now, he was mean. He used to say things like, "You better find yourself another program. You are hip, slick, and cool." And I'd puff up and go, "That's right. I am." I thought the hip part was mean because I thought he was referring to my backside, but which was quite hippie. And when I told him that this woman couldn't sponsor me any longer, he said, "I'll meet you tomorrow at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. You be there at 11:30, and I was. I showed up, and my journey began. I went to a meeting. It was called the Laugh-In Meeting. It was at Studio 12. It was a Sunday at noon, and there was music in there. There was laughter in there. People had these calm faces, and the women started to hand me their phone numbers. And I was amazed. I cried through the whole meeting, and I did what any good alcoholic woman does, at least, the ones I know. When I left, I threw all the numbers in the trash. And I say that from podiums because if you're an alcoholic like I am, I can't call you. Are you kidding? Are you serious? I don't even want to answer the phone, let alone call you. "Hi, I'm the chubby girl today at the meeting," Later, that sponsor taught me that I can give my number, but I better get your number if I want to make some kind of contact and a difference. So there I was, and I guess I neglected to tell you that first meeting that I went to, that food meeting, I was about 238. I had open sores on my shoulders and around my waist. I was sweaty. I was in menopause. I was 40 years old. I couldn't reach my shoes to tie them, and I had also become that mother that would lose her kids at the mall. You know, I had little fires that would start in my home. Jeff liked it because the fire engines would come at least once a month. And, lots of little cigarettes going everywhere. And my kids didn't always have clean clothes. I always looked fabulous. Size 24, I was adorable. And there I was. I started to do the food thing. I ended up at Chandler Lodge every day at 9 o'clock for an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And at noon, I would go to Studio 12 for Cocaine Anonymous. And at night, I would go to those food meetings. My husband had left 3 different times the year before. And I had begged him all 3 times on my knees, please, don't go. Please don't go. I promise I'll stop. And if you're an alcoholic like I am, you can't stop. And you don't even know why you can't stop. And I used to do little tricks. I'll pour it down the sink. I'll hide it. I'll do whatever. And I can't stop. And I can't stop. And he keeps getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And I started going to these meetings, and I wanted what you had. I'm not one of these people that gets to Alcoholics Anonymous, well, okay, I'll do it. I don't want to do it. I saw what you have. I saw this, and I wanted it. I kept saying, when am I going to feel better? And he would say, if you do these things, you will feel better. And I'd say, okay. You know in the book where it says, yes, I'm willing? I was beyond willing. I would have done anything. You know, in Los Angeles, you always hear somebody say, I would have gone down Ventura Boulevard naked, pushing a peanut with my nose. You know, I would have done anything. And I started to go to those meetings, and after Chandler, they would say, come join us, come to the coffee shop. And I'd say, oh, no, I can't go. I'm busy. And they'd say, no, you're not. They were mind readers. And I would sit in that coffee shop between those 2 meetings, and I don't know what they were talking about, but I sat there, and they made me feel welcome. And at 7 months sobriety, I asked that husband to go. For me only, I realized that if I stayed in that marriage, I would die there. I had no skills. I had no different tools. At 5 months, I said to him, because I was going to book studies and open meetings, I was going to every meeting available in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said to him one night, I said, look, honey, look, it says here that we can make this work. We'll be okay. We're going to be okay. And he said to me, what makes you think I want to? Now, I have to tell you, I met him in 1965. We were legally divorced in 95. He had had enough. We burn people up here. We're hard. I have a friend in my home group, and he always says, I don't know, I don't think I want to be married to me. You know. My kids were suffering from alcoholism. My son, from the time he first got his teeth, he started to grind his teeth. He ground them every single night for 7, 8 years. My daughter, by the time she was in 6th grade, was 172 pounds. She knew how to get through the world. She got straight A's and ate. And she ate in secret. And there would be like little wrappers all over her room, hidden. My kids used to, like when we used to call them vodka wars, when the fighting would begin, my husband got very violent. You know, he said to me, if you just quit drinking, everything will be all right. If you just quit drinking and using drugs, I'll get a job. I never understood why he was going to get a job when I was stopped. And it got worse. It got worse because I took out the common denominator, which was alcohol. That's what we had in that. We loved each other, but that's what we did. That was our solution. That was our answer. And all of a sudden, we didn't have that anymore. And I have you. And I have an opportunity to find a power. And I have an opportunity to find out what it was that happened and change it. 6 and 7. I love your topic. Entire psychic change? You bet. You bet. I was taught that that's a soul change. I had spent my whole life trying to figure it out in my head. And after a while, working the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was able to start to come from here through my heart where God is. They told me I pray too from what I'm praying, whatever they say. That's what they say. Hey. And there it was, I could start to come from love. I could come from my heart, and he didn't have any of those things. He didn't want it. So at 7 months sobriety, I asked him to go. And he left me with a mess, huge mess. He left in January, and between August and January, it got violent in my house, really violent, dangerous for me and my kids. And by the time he left, it was a relief. But then it all broke loose. Turns out there were $80,000 on credit cards. Those 4 properties that had been paid for were all now in foreclosure. I had been signing papers. I'm an alcoholic. I don't know how you guys are. Sign the paper. Okay, I'm busy. Where? And I signed away, all of it. I signed it away, and we lost it all. And at about a year and a half, 2 years sobriety, I found myself homeless with 2 kids and on food stamps. And I don't mention that because it's so sad. I mention it because it never, ever, ever occurred to me to drink. I had a sponsor who said, get in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. You get busy, Barbara. And I would say, but I can't feed my children. What are you talking about? And he'd say, that doesn't matter. You're taking a newcomer to the meeting? Well, yeah, but there's no money. And he'd say, well, what about literature? You've never done literature. What about a coffee commitment? After a while, you have to go, yes, okay, hallelujah. And I never drank. It never occurred to me to drink. By 1992, I had changed home groups, and I was going to a place called the Little Brown Church, and it was close to my home, and those people, I had like maybe 2 years sober, and they embraced me, and they welcomed me, and I think a bunch of ashes just went all over me. And I don't know to this day who it was. But I would open up the door, and there'd be bags of food there so I could feed my children. One winter there, it was really cold, and there were 2 jackets on the porch. One for Amy and one for Jeffrey. It was cold, and I didn't have anything for them. My daughter was going into high school, and she wanted those Doc Martens shoes. And they're expensive. They're like $120. And one Sunday, she opened up the door, and there was a pair of Doc Martens there, just in her size. They were used, but they were hers. And she took really good care of them. When I would go to those meetings, the guys in Alcoholics Anonymous would take my kids, and the men would take my son out, and they'd walk him up to the store and get him some gum, or they'd shoot baskets with him so I could have a meeting. And the women in Alcoholics Anonymous would let my daughter babysit, and she'd give me half the money to help out. I found myself in a lot of trouble financially, obviously. And first I had 1 job at a preschool, and then I had 2 jobs, and then I had 2 schools I was going to. I was doing catering at night for a guy in the program, and I was teaching dance on the weekends. I had 22 little tap and ballerinas, and I got a nanny job, and I was busy. That's for me. And I still couldn't get it together. I just couldn't get it together. And we found ourselves in this house. It was itty bitty. And I gave the bedroom to my son. And these are 2 kids that lost all of it. Their dad disappeared. I forgot to tell you. He disappeared. And a guy in the program put a door on this little small room in the front, and I gave that to Amy. And I slept on a futon in the living room for 6 years. And we had fun in that house. And when she left for college, we cried. Not because she was leaving, but because I got her bed. And you can do anything around here if you're willing. There are no big deals here. There are none. So I found myself doing all this stuff, and preschool's about 3 hours long, and people would say, so what do we do now? And I started saying, well, I could babysit your kids. And this backyard was huge. There was nothing in it, just dirt. And I would start babysitting, and always boys. They used to call them Barbara's boys. Looked like Lord of the Flies out there, I'm telling you. And I had a new sponsor at that time. She said, you better fill out some forms here and get yourself a license. That was hideous. They actually ask you questions like your name and your address. It took me about 2 years to fill out the forms. It was too hard. But I did it. And I have to tell you that it's about 10 years later, I have my own preschool today. And it's not my school. Thank you, but it's your school. It's Alcoholics Anonymous' school. This is God's school. It's AA built. I don't advertise. You can't find me in a book. There's no sign. It's word of mouth. And it's been like that for 10 years. And it's always crowded. And I'll tell you why I think that's true. I think it's true because this school is built on what you gave me. It's on the principles of the traditions and the steps. It's a magnificent place. It's colorful. There's music there. Anything from Bach to Basie. There's no Barney at my school. Unless you really need it. I'll put it in for you. And I'll tell you what happened. The day, of course, if this sounds familiar to any of you, the day the name was due, my Al-Anon sponsor was there, and she said, why don't you call this the Magic Yard? You know, she walked out and she took her breath away. And that is the name of my school, the Magic Yard. And I'll tell you what it's like there. I was always ready to buy whatever I needed for that school, except I've never had to buy anything. Because people bring stuff. And I'm not talking about the people whose children go to that school. I would come home and there would be barbecue tables in the back, in the driveway, with notes. Are you the lady with the school? Can you use this table? There'd be slides. There'd be boxes of dress up. There'd be books. There'd be dollies. There'd be bikes. Is this the Magic Yard? Can you use this? It is the Magic Yard. It's a remarkable, remarkable place. There is magic there. There's God there. And the kids are happy there. Parents come to see the school and they go, what is it about this place? There's no screaming or crying or yelling. I go, it's the Magic Yard. They don't know who I am. I have to tell you, my parents think I'm a little, you know, you're always so happy. You bet. And I would even throw out, if you're not happy today, go get yourself some. Get happy, you know. I was telling Marina yesterday that about a year and a half ago, I lost 23 people in a 2-year period. They all died. They were old, they were young, there was suicide, there was overdoses, there were babies that died. My best girlfriend of 47 years died. She died of cancer in a horrible way. She would have done anything to be here today, anything. She had the strongest chemo, she had the strongest everything. She would have done it all. At the end, the chemo was so hard she couldn't walk or use her hands. And we have a chance. We have a chance, it's $1. You know, if you do the work and do anything, we can put our disease in remission one day at a time. And we can be here. When I was new, I heard a guy say, if you're not happy, joyous, and free most of the time, and I'm sure all hell's going to break loose now, he said on this tape, then you're doing it wrong. And I heard that because I want to do it. I want that. I want that. I should tell you about my kids today. They were 7 and 10 when I got here, and my daughter is now so attractive when the speaker's nose is running. Isn't that nice? It's been worse. She's 27 years old today. She graduated from Berkeley. We filled out those forms, and she was able to go to school, and she's such a high achiever, she could have graduated in 2 years, and I made her stay for 4, because it's the right thing to do. And when she left, she went to New Orleans, and she taught special needs high school children. in downtown New Orleans in the 9th Ward. And she lost people during the hurricane recently. She lost students that were killed there. And she stayed there for 2 years. It was in a program called Teach for America. And then she came back and she filled out some more forms. And she was accepted to do a doctorate program. And she lives up in Berkeley, up in Oakland today. And she goes to school and she's going to be Dr. Diner. Who would have thought? You know? And I don't tell you that because it's about me. What it is about is Alcoholics Anonymous. You taught me how to be a mother. You taught me how to be a teacher, a friend, a daughter, a sister. You taught me how to be a sponsee and pay attention and listen and have action. And you taught me how to be a sponsor. I have real friends today. The real deal. You want friends? Be a friend. You know, that's what my first sponsor used to say. It was like, ew. Ew. 40 years old, so attractive. Ew. My son is 24 years old, and he graduated a year and a half ago from UC Santa Barbara. And the reason I mention that is when he was 17 years old, he was arrested for drugs. I know, it's shocking. Shocking. He was arrested and he had 3 felony counts against him. And it's just like his mom, or it's better, you know. And I'll tell you what happened, briefly. He was a minor at the time. He was 17, and we started to go through that process. It took a year, and I'd go with him every other month to the juvie place with the barbed wire on the, it was awful. And I did what I've always done. I threw myself in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I sat in my morning meeting every single day, and I sobbed because I was so afraid. You know, he looks like Opie, for heaven's sakes. He's got freckles, and he's really skinny. He's got red hair and green eyes. He had braces at the time, and I'd wake up like thinking people would punch him in the mouth, and, you know, and it was horrible. It was just awful. And he's not that bright. He was not a good drug addict. He was like the Forrest Gump of the drug world. You know, I just have to tell you. He wasn't getting any money. He wasn't getting free drugs. His father and I were very disappointed in him. More Al-Anon for me. So anyway, I was going to these things, and I was throwing myself in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my people in my morning meeting would sit there, and they'd listen every day. And that miracle happened. The further down I got and the bigger my fear got, the more. I don't know if you know about dolphins, and isn't this something? But dolphins do a remarkable thing in nature. When one of their own starts to sink, they get on either side of the one sinking and they buoy them up to the surface. And that's what my home group did for me. If you don't have a home group, go get yourself one. So they really know when you're saying, I'm fine. They'll say, you're lying. Coffee shop time. And they pulled me up. They pulled me up, and a miracle happened for me. When it first happened, I was terrified. And by the time it came time for the sentencing, I was all right. I was ready. I had worked the steps. I had come to the realization that whatever happened, it was going to be okay. It was going to be okay. My son stood in front of that judge, and in juvie, there's like 2 guards, the district attorney, our public defender, the judge, and me. His dad wasn't there, and it was just me and Jeff. And I was pretty certain I wasn't going to see him for a while. He was going to go spend, we were told, 3 or 4 years in the California Youth Authority. This is not a good place. This is not good. And the judge leaned forward that morning, and he said, Jeffrey, what am I going to do with you? And, you know, Jeff, blah, 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 blah. He looked at the district attorney. He said, what do you think? The district attorney kind of shrugged. He looked at our public defender and said, what do you want? He said, I have a feeling about this boy. I think he's going to be okay. And she said, I want it down to a misdemeanor and give him some fines and give him some community service. And I walked out of there with my son. And he didn't have to serve any time. And remarkable things happen here. Our book says that. It says that. Believe it if you don't believe it. Believe it because I believe it. You know, it's an amazing thing. I walked out of there. He graduated as a film major. And I don't think he'll hear this. I'm going to tell you a secret. Last Thanksgiving, he came home for Thanksgiving, and he said, Mom, I got a real problem. I said, what is it, Jeff? He said, every time I smoke weed, notice he didn't quit, I get really anxious, and I think I'm going to have to stop getting loaded. And I said, as any Mary Ann Jones daughter, I said, oh, really? You're kidding, Jeffrey. He believes that. If you run into him, don't ever tell him that it was probably because he had no money, things were falling apart in his life, and it had nothing to do with his weed. He's not that big of a smoker, but he hasn't had anything to smoke in almost a year. And I have to tell you, talk about remarkable things, he has not stopped working in the film industry for the last 3 months. When he decided to go and get himself a job, he got a job. Leslie knows him. He's a wonderful, wonderful young man. So what do I want to say? I have an opinion and I'll sit down. Am I over time? Yep, you're good. I'm good. I am good. I'm sober. Woo! This is my job. I figured out the other day, you know what my job is? My job is to spread the good news. This is good news, good news. So here's my opinion. I told you all that stuff, not because it's so awful and it's so terrible. I told you because it's my story and that's what you guys asked me to do. But I told you because this is what happened for me. I have experience today. I know how to stay sober. I know how to be a single parent and stay sober. I know how to start my own business and stay sober. I know how to go back to school. I started school in 1967 and I graduated from college in 2001. It took me 26 and a half years. But I know how to do that and not drink. And I think that when those women call me, I was telling Marina, I sponsor a lot of single moms. Duh. Because that's what I know. And everybody knows something. When I got sober, I was over at Chandler Lodge. I'm telling you, there were fights, chairs flying, smoke was waist high, and it was a blast. And you'd hear somebody say, I'm sober today, but I was married to a goat. And I would go, wow, listen to this. This is going to get good. And somebody else would raise his hand and say, oh yeah, well, I was married to 2 goats. And it was fun. It was great. But through all the drama and all the stuff, what I really heard was that you guys that are further down the path from me, you know how to do stuff. You know how to do stuff. So when my sponsor said, you got to get food stamps, I was like, oh my God, that's too hard. The first part is I even have to talk to somebody. And I started to pay attention. He said, you better learn to listen around here, young lady. Young lady? Click. He was always clicking on me. He was always hanging up. And I did. I started to listen. And what I heard was that you guys know how to do it. You know how to stay sober and help another alcoholic. So here's my opinion, and I'll sit down. My opinion is this. I think we all have a story. I sponsored a gal once, and she didn't think she had a good story. And I don't know where she is today. She left. Working on her story, I suppose. We do have stories here, but it's our job to tell it. So my opinion is we have to share here. We have to share. You could sit in AA and take all you want, but at some point, you have to start to give it back. And you could share if you're afraid. If you're like I was and sitting in that meeting and too afraid, my sponsor used to put his finger on my elbow and force my arm up. I had commitments all over the valley, Do we have a burning desire? Whoa. And my arm would go up. And it helped me. It helped me. And so here's the deal. If you're too afraid, share it with your sponsor. And if you don't have one, go get yourself one. And then share it in your group. But share. Because here's the deal. If you don't raise your hand, our newcomer won't know that you know. We know. We know how to stay sober. We do. And all you have to do is watch. Those hands should go up, Tell your story. Tell your story so somebody else knows that you know. I didn't know how to get those food stamps, and someone shared. I didn't know how to be alone, what I thought was alone. And then I find out that I've never been alone. It's easy. My sobriety is easy. I sponsor a lot of women. I have about 16 women. Marina and I, we're so the same. We're just the same. I start my day every single day on my knees. I say the 3rd step prayer, the 7th step prayer, the 11th step prayer. I ask God every single day, what can I do? What can I do? Show me how I can be of service. Please direct my thinking. Divorce it from self-seeking and self-pity and dishonesty. Give me intuitive thought, inspiration, or decision. Please, I need it. Please speak through me. Be with my kids today. Put your arms around them. Do what you would do with them. And you know, my life is good. My life is good. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the most important thing that I do. I've never had a love affair like this before in my entire life. It's grand. It's grand to be sober. Doesn't mean it's always easy. It's hard to lose friends. It's hard to lose homes. It's hard to lose. But in the long run, what does it say? The 4 paradoxes. You know, we had to die to that old life to be reborn. You know, I have a new life today, and it's right here in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. So thank you for having me be here. And I want to thank God and Alcoholics Anonymous.